Globally, species of plants and animals are disappearing at an ever-increasing rate. Wildlife populations declined by 73% between 1970 and 2020, with the loss and degradation of nature having huge consequences. It threatens livelihoods, access to food and clean air and water. Pollution, climate change and habitat destruction are accelerating the process. So what can be done? In the Atewa Range Forest Reserve in Ghana, conservationists are working with communities to keep one local species from slipping away.
Wading through these muddy waters, it's hard to see the tiny creature they're looking for, but after hours of searching, finally success.
We got one. Good.
This tadpole is the only sign the team from Herb Conservation Ghana has seen of the Atewa slippery frog in their search, a species that experts say is on the brink of extinction.
So the sediments from the illegal mining usually gets into the water bodies, these streams, and then it endangers the habitat of these frogs. So they end up, we end up losing them, and it's become quite a menace.
At the captive laboratory, the team is using the tadpoles to breed the frogs. Their mission is to boost the population with the aim of saving the species. First discovered in 2006, there are estimated to be around 1,000 in the wild, with numbers declining.
We have about 22 tadpoles in these tanks, which we are breeding to successfully be able to have up to 400 slippery frogs in the next 5 years and release them back into their natural habitats.
The Atewa species is related to another critically endangered creature, the Togo slippery frog, found on the border between Togo and Ghana. Threats to both species are bauxite mining and drought, drying up of freshwater streams. But another major threat is hunting. Frogs are considered a delicacy here.
The reason why we hunt the frog is because we have no jobs. Although we know their numbers are falling, we have no options. That's how we feed our families. I come to catch the frogs, I go home and sell them. I will be able to provide for the house because I have 2 kids and a wife.
Herb Conservation is working with communities to set up projects, like ecotourism, to create a new source of income from the slippery critters. They hope that people will work with them to save the frogs and their habitat.
Johannes Vogel is Director General of Berlin's Museum of Natural History. Welcome to DW. How do you convince lawmakers and politicians to save frogs?
First of all, thank you for this brilliant article you did, because you addressed already many of the issues. And what you can see there is it must be in the interest of the local community to preserve the frogs, because guess what frogs eat when they are in the water? Mosquito larvae. And we all know the biggest killer in Africa is not a crocodile, it is the mosquito that kills hundreds of thousands of people every year. And frogs, happy, healthy ecosystems, is what guarantees human health. So it's in our own interest to preserve biodiversity. And that is the link we need to get across to the population and to the politicians.
So that really underlines what's at stake here. Why can't politicians understand that, or some local communities?
That is a question I always ask myself, and I wouldn't start probably with asking that question in Ghana. I would probably ask that question in Germany or in Europe, because here we have the resources and the scientific knowledge and the volunteer support to actually preserve biodiversity, but we are still driving for cheaper meat in particular, that allows us to destroy the wildlife as a consequence. We need to get rid of our lust for meat.
Is it enough, though, to protect a few species in national parks, or do we need a complete rethink of how we live, grow food, as you mentioned, and build economies?
Yes. So in my humble opinion, we have one planet we share with 8 billion other people and countless species. And these countless species, these functioning ecosystems, be it the oceans, be it the rainforests, they guarantee that we as humans can actually live the lifestyle we want to. And so it has to be our primary interest to preserve the ecosystems that give us healthy soils for food, water to drink, and air to breathe. And funnily enough, 50% of all economic output we as humans produce comes free from nature. So it has to be in our economic interest. Why we are not getting that into our heads and into policy is a conundrum to me. We as a Natural History Museum try our very best, and hundreds of thousands of people come every year to share these ideas. Globally, millions and millions go to natural history museums, zoos, botanic gardens, but still we do not get the majorities for the necessary deep change we need. And a day like today and your program help us.
Let me put this to you. For those who say species come and go, is there an argument against trying to freeze nature how it is, as some people put it?
Oh, nature, you can't freeze nature. Look, we as humans are not the same as we were 350,000 years ago when we started to evolve on this planet. Everything is changing. The argument is that I would make, and the only argument, what do we need to do that we as humans can thrive on this planet? Nothing else in a way matters. Evolution, nature will go on with or without humans. And I would, for the sake of all of us, like us to live with nature, not against nature.
You heard it from Johannes, Vogel, Director General of Berlin's Museum of Natural History. Thank you very much for chiming in.
Thank you.
Louise Osborne joins us from DW Environment. Louise, tell us more about the importance of these slippery frogs, as they're known, and just how much of a risk they are of slipping away from us.
I mean, these frogs are at risk as they are critically endangered, but they are among a lot of species that are facing problems. Around 1 million species are thought to be on the brink of extinction. And that is hugely problematic because they all have a role to play in interacting with each other, whether that is providing food for other species or controlling insect species, for example. Experts have explained it to me using Jenga as an analogy, for example. You have this tower, each species is a block, and as you remove one or two, the tower is still standing, but it becomes more and more unstable until it topples. This would be hugely problematic for humans because we are so reliant on animals for our food, whether it's, pollinators, for our crops, for example, or fish that we eat. Forests are also used for timber to make houses or for energy, and we use biodiversity also for the chemical compounds that make many of our medicines. So they are really important.
So what are the most common threats? We heard about mining there, drought, hunting. What is really at the top of the list?
I think I would say habitat loss. Now, there was a new report that came out yesterday, for example, that showed data that we'd seen a record amount of forest loss in 2024. Many animals are reliant on forests for their homes. It's home to about 80% of land species, for example. Pollution is also a major problem. We've all seen pictures, for example, of turtles with plastic wrapped around their necks. We've also seen, issues of oil spills where you see, seagulls covered in oil, for example. And of course, there's climate change, as well as having a huge impact on humans. It's also having a huge impact on biodiversity, driving them out of their homes. For those that can adapt, and for others, they die off because of the extreme heat.
Tell us then what the solutions are. Give us a bit of hope.
I mean, it's not easy. Governments are or have agreed to try to protect 30% of land areas and 30% of marine areas by 2030, but obviously there's only 5 years to go, so there's still a lot more that needs to be done. There needs to be close work with communities, locals living on the ground, to help them protect the areas that they are living next to. A lot of attention needs to be given also to Indigenous communities who have been, carrying out this protection for centuries.
Louise Osborne, some very good points there. Thank you very much for coming in again today.